Quick lesson on some of the properties of numbers that we have. The commutative property is about commuting, so it allows us to change the order of the problem that we have in front of us. This is going to work for addition and also for multiplication. So if we have an example of 3 plus 4 plus 7, we can switch this order around to 7 plus 4 plus 3. That would be allowing us to use the commutative property. With multiplying, same idea, 3 times 4 times 7, we can also switch that around as 7 times 4 times 3. In the associative property, we're talking about what can we associate. So we're talking about grouping here. If you think about who are your friends, those are the people that you associate. They're grouping. And we can change what gets grouped within a problem. Again, this is going to work for addition and multiplication only. So if we have 3 plus 4 plus 7, and let's say I group the 3 and the 4 with grouping symbols, parentheses, this is actually the same thing as me grouping together the 4 and the 7. In the multiplication example, if I group the 3 and the 4, it's the same thing as grouping the 4 and the 7 together as well. That allows us to kind of condense down the problems and make them a little bit easier for us sometimes. In the identity property, think about the ID, your identity. You do not want to change the number that you started with. Again, this is for addition and for multiplication. In terms of addition, if we think about the number 4, what can I add to it to still keep us at 4? I would be adding 0. So 0 is the identity here for addition. In multiplying, what can I multiply by to keep 4? That would be a 1. So 1 is our identity of multiplication. For the inverse, what I want to do is this kind of gets split into the additive inverse and the multiplicative inverse. When I think additive, we talked about this and we said the additive inverses are really opposites. So 4 and negative 4 add together to give us 0. 3 and negative 3 add together to give us 0. These are additive inverses. So 4 and negative 4, they're opposites. Negative 5 and 5 add together to give us 0. In terms of the multiplicative inverse, we want to know if I have a fraction like 1/4, what can I multiply it by to get 1? Earlier, when we talked about dividing fractions, this was actually called the reciprocal. And when we multiply by the reciprocal, which here is 4 over 1, we get 1. So if I have 2/3, I'm going to multiply this by 3/2, and that's also going to give me 1. Negative 5/4, I'm going to multiply by negative 4/5 to give me 1. Okay? On the next page, there's just a couple examples here. And we'll just kind of run through a couple of these together. I'm not going to do all of them for you. They do get pretty repetitive. Example 1, property says that changing the grouping. So this is the associative property. In example 2, you can see parentheses here. The negative 7 and the 4 are in parentheses, and then the negative 7 and the 6. So this, we are associating different numbers. So this is the associative property of multiplication. We can just call it the associative property, but we also designate that it is multiplication. In example 3, you notice my order is changed. So this is my commutative property, and it would be the commutative of addition, specifically. The blank property means the numbers can be swapped, so commutative because we're talking order. The blank, the rule that refers to grouping is the associative. In this one, I'm regrouping, so this is also my associative. Here, this is actually going to be 7 times what gives me 7? That's 1. And this is the identity property, specifically identity of multiplication. 9 times a negative 2 equals negative 2 times a 9. So this is going to be the commutative since they're changing. And let's pop down here to example 10. This one is times 1/4 to give me 1, and times a negative 1/4 to give me a negative 1. And this is my inverse property of multiplication in this case. Down here, example 12, 4 plus 6 is the same thing as 6 plus 4, which is really just 10. And that's my commutative property there as well. Okay? Those are just some of the examples of the different properties of numbers that we have in math.